Mark, thank you very much. Let me also thank the organizers and sponsors. It's been over 12 years of negotiations. And if you think that we're going to be able to mobilize the international community, particularly with the Russians and the Chinese hiding behind the Russians on sanctions and other issues, good luck to you. Moreover, I don't think we know even where the baseline is. The Iranians have stonewalled us on the 12 or 11 of the 12 potential military dimensions activities. These are activities that include the design of a nuclear warhead. They have promised over and over, and they do again in the agreed framework apparently, to come clean on these issues, but they haven't, and there's no reason to believe that they will, particularly if the pressure is relieved. And there's apparently no agreement even on the fundamentals of the 20% enriched uranium that exists in oxide form, currently in Iran. The additional protocol plus the other measures that are mentioned in the White House press statement are positive. It's better to have greater transparency. It's great to have Iranian commitments, whether they will fulfill them or not. But even if they do fulfill them, without unfettered, anywhere, anytime access to facilities, to people, and to documentation, we will not have effective verification. The irony is that this agreement is being done in the name of nonproliferation, when in fact it will have the opposite effect. And it will also, in my view, contribute to regional instability. Not that we have, a peaceful Iran now. Just look at what Iran is doing in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen. This will, I think, embolden the mullahs in Tehran. And it will also give those mullahs confidence that they will be able to crack down even further. It is an extremely repressive regime today, but crack down even further and not fear outside intervention. That was the lesson that the mullahs took away from Libya. Gaddafi gave up his nuclear weapons program. He was overthrown and he was killed. They're not going to make the same mistake. This is what they say. And so for all of those reasons, I think that when we talk about the details of the agreement, whether this aspect is verifiable or whether we're going to have monitoring in certain specific cases, you have to keep the larger strategic picture in mind. And I look forward to talking about that. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's now already afternoon, so good afternoon to everyone. Yes, this is a tall order for the IAEA, and it's not only about the money, actually. Very often people, when they get a task, they ask more people, more money. But here you need actually tools, because the verification regime here, and when I look at the framework here, what we need to have, divide this in three blocks. One is detection, one is deterrence, and one is the enforcement of the compliance. These are not unseparated triplets. They all go together. This is the first thing we need to keep in our mind. Then for the detection. Well, IAEA has very good tools, safeguards agreement, additional protocol, and now we are promised even additional protocol plus, which yet still need to be defined. But let's go back now to the detection. First of all, we have to look at it in different time frames because the requirements change with the time here. The first half a year will be actually setting of the baseline. And in order to have the baseline, you need to have a declaration from Iran that you know what they have or what they state they have. And to that end, this additional protocol plus has to be also put to a formal declaration process. Then, once we have this one, then the IAEA has to do the full verification, and for me, one of the most important things there is how many centrifuges Iran has today. We know there are some 19,000 in Natanz and Fordo together, but the question is, are these the all all what they have. Because this has a direct impact on the breakout times which the people talk. Because this breakout time of 1 year or so, it's actually an arithmetic breakout time based on the declared centrifuges which remain in Natanz and Fordo. But if you have somewhere a stock of much more advanced centrifuges, that's a different thing, and will certainly have an impact on this. Under Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement and under the additional protocol, the IAEA access is a little bit limited, and this is where the provisions of additional protocol plus will kick in. And in order to do this properly, IAEA needs to have additional access rights. They have to be crafted in such a way that they are surprise. It's not that you need to go through a long due process to convince the other party that I want to go to this place because of this and this. So there needs to be an unfettered access to information, sites, equipment, people, and materials. Without that, it won't be a success. And those need to be negotiated, and Iran has to declare those items as well. Then, cutting off the paths to nuclear weapon capability. I think we have a little bit simplified case if we say that it's only Arak reactor, it's only Fordo, it's only Natanz or the covered. Actually, it can be a mixture of those. Certainly, uranium and plutonium you separate from each other. So the inspection regime has to be crafted in such a way that it deters Iran to take those, so that they see that there is a tremendous risk if they do it, and if they do it and are caught, there are consequences. And here is a lesson number 2 to this end, and this is to do with the compliance with JPOA. Actually, when you read it, the way I read it, actually Iran has not complied fully with JPOA. Actually, Iran has had all the time excess uranium hexafluoride in the stock during this 1.5 years. It was supposed to be about 7.5 tons. It's been 8 tons. Actually, more than that 300 kilos, which will be the limit on this envisioned thing. And this is the lesson which comes from the past. All these red lines which have been passed in the last 12 years. So when this agreement is negotiated, there should be no discussion about the parameters. Those which are there, one has to stick to those. And then the last remark is to do with the Arak. Well, since the Arak reactor has uranium in fuel, the physics laws say that it produces plutonium, whether you want or not. So I think that all the most important thing is here to remember that the plutonium problem just gets postponed, because after year 15 there's no limitation for heavy water reactors, and this is why Iran keeps the option for heavy water reactor open. I think that this is where I stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Tillis, thank you for being here and for all the work you're doing on this important issue. And my colleagues on the panel, thank you for that question. Let me just say, look, we learned a lot from with negotiations with North Korea, and they continue. They're in abeyance for a long period of time, but that doesn't mean they can't be reestablished in a meaningful way, as long as there's a commitment on the part of the other party to do what they said they would do, and that's the key: monitoring and verification. Monitoring and verification. Obviously, the key has to be the monitoring and verification regime. Do we have access, unfettered access? Do we have that? And what is the process for adjudicating issues where sovereignty issues, if you will, on the part of the Iranian government will say, well, the sovereignty issues, you can't have access. Well, what are we doing on that? How do you get through that? And Dr. Anand, you mentioned that, and Ambassador Joseph, and so forth. So these are key issues: monitoring and verification. It not only means access to facilities, it means access to individuals, the scientists, the technologists. It means having access to the documentation. I mean, in North Korea, it's so much easier, in my view, than Iran. In Iran, we're talking about 18 sites in 9 different locations that we know of that have been declared. It's immense. So for the IAEA, you got to give them a lot of credit. They're going to have to be out there and so forth. I will mention this also, sanctions. You don't give up on sanctions. It's the one card, it's a major card, it's a lever you have. If you give that up immediately, you don't have much to bargain with. Look what they're doing territorially in the region, their relationships in the region. That's important because it speaks to intent. Intent. When you have the issues in Yemen and in Iraq and Syria, and you mentioned Hezbollah and so forth, I mean, when you look at the Revolutionary Guard, when you look at the reported attempt to assassinate the Saudi ambassador to the United States, perpetrated by the Quds forces of the Revolutionary Guard, you say, what are we dealing with here? Let me also cite the IAEA, the Director General's reports to the Board of Governors. The most recent one is February 2015. When you go through this report and you go through the previous reports, it's so powerful to hear that here is the IAEA monitor saying, we don't have access. They're denying access. To use their language, it's unreal. To look at it, the agency remains concerned about the possible existence in Iran of undisclosed nuclear-related activities involving military-related organizations, including related to the development of a nuclear payload for a missile. It goes on and on. So here are the people saying that, and now you're talking about a report coming from the British, speaking about the supply chain, which is very important. And here's Iran that's capable of producing, and I look to Ambassador Joseph and Dr. Hananam, they can produce the very sophisticated centrifuges, and they can go to a very high level to really spin. But they do still need that chain and supply chain. So what does it tell you? It speaks to intent. It speaks to intent loud and clear. To do it, it's flagrant to do it even at this time in the midst of negotiations, to be going out to procure materials for the production of even more sophisticated centrifuges.
Thank you. I want to close by making the following personal observations, if you, the audience, will permit me. You know, I started 40 years ago negotiating as an attorney and as a diplomat agreements. When I first embarked on my association with the Iran-American community, I had the privilege of meeting Madame Rajavi of the Iran-American community. And remember, as I said, I am proud of my Democratic Party heritage and my role up here as a foreign policy advisor. And it's been a bipartisan journey to understand the essential desire of the Iranian people for regime change. Iran poses a dire threat to its own people, the regime, as well as a threat to our allies and to the American people. And it was Congress, not this administration, that imposed the sanctions that have brought Iran to the table. And it was the work of the Iranian-American community that awoke Congress. This was a great panel, a great number of experts, and I learned a great deal today. I hope you did, and I thank you for being here.